Time transforms us all, but some British actors have undergone changes so dramatic that looking at their early work feels like meeting a completely different person. From method actors who pushed their bodies to dangerous extremes, to stars whose natural aging defied Hollywood expectations, these transformations tell stories far beyond simple makeup and prosthetics. Some gained and lost weight so many times their doctors begged them to stop, while others disappeared so completely into roles that even their co-stars walked past them on set without recognition. Here are 15 fascinating stories about British actors whose looks changed the most over time. Christian Bale's dangerous yo-yo Christian Bale holds the record for the most dramatic and repeated physical transformations in modern cinema. But it's come at a cost he's only recently admitted. The Welsh actor dropped to 120 pounds for The Machinist in 2004, surviving on 1 apple, 1 can of tuna, and black coffee per day for 4 months. He described the experience as reaching a Zen-like state where he felt like pure thought, reading books for 10 hours straight without stopping. But just 6 months later, he had to bulk up 60 pounds for Batman Begins, creating a whiplash effect on his body that doctors warned was unsustainable. What many don't realize is that Bale showed up to the Batman set so muscled that he didn't fit into the suit anymore and had to slim back down. Throughout his career, he's repeated this cycle over and over. For The Fighter, he dropped to 145 pounds. For American Hustle, he gained 43 pounds, eating nothing but pies and cheeseburgers, ballooning to 228 pounds. Then for Vice, where he played Dick Cheney, he packed on another 40 pounds and shaved his head. By 2019, after dropping 70 pounds for Ford versus Ferrari, Bale finally admitted what his body had been telling him for years. He told reporters he couldn't keep doing these transformations because his mortality was staring him in the face, acknowledging that at 45 years old, what used to take 2 months to recover from now takes 6 months or more. The physical toll includes herniated discs from his Batman work and joints that click when they shouldn't. Most troubling was his admission that for Thor: Love and Thunder, when he had to grow long fingernails for the role, the physical restrictions rendered him completely incapable of everything, affecting even his brain function. Gary Oldman's chameleon career. Gary Oldman has spent his entire career making audiences forget what he actually looks like, transforming so completely for each role that many people have trouble recognizing him without heavy makeup. His most celebrated transformation came in Darkest Hour, where he won an Oscar for playing Winston Churchill. The transformation required 200 hours in the makeup chair over the course of filming, with 14 pounds of silicone rubber applied fresh each day by legendary makeup artist Kazuhiro. But here's what made it genius. Hiro deliberately left Oldman's eyes, forehead, and mouth largely uncovered, treating the prosthetics as a second skin rather than a mask. This allowed Oldman's actual expressions to do the real work, while the prosthetics provided Churchill's distinctive jowls and build. The cigars were real too, $20,000 worth of Cuban cigars that gave Oldman nicotine poisoning during production. 3 decades earlier, Oldman had undergone a completely different kind of transformation for Bram Stoker's Dracula, where he portrayed the vampire at multiple stages of his immortal life. In the film's opening, he appears as an ancient, decrepit creature with pasty white makeup and a bizarre heart-shaped hairstyle. Later scenes show him as a young, handsome aristocrat in dark sunglasses and a top hat, then as various monstrous forms, including a bat and a wolf. Oldman reportedly hated being in the bat costume, but the transformations allowed him to show Dracula's tragic romanticism rather than just playing a monster. Throughout his career, Oldman has made a habit of being unrecognizable. In Hannibal, he played Mason Verger, buried under so much makeup and prosthetics that he demanded his name be left off the marketing materials, wanting to preserve the mystery of who was playing the facially disfigured character. As Sid Vicious in Sid and Nancy, he was a punk rock skeleton. As Sirius Black in Harry Potter, he was gaunt and wild-haired. The transformations aren't just physical, but vocal and behavioral, making Oldman one of the few actors who can genuinely claim to disappear into every role. Tom Hardy's brutal bulking. Tom Hardy's physical transformation for Bronson in 2009 remains one of the most intense bulking processes ever documented on film. Given just 5 weeks to transform into Britain's most notorious prisoner, Charles Bronson, Hardy embarked on a training regime focused entirely on explosive power and intimidation. He did thousands of push-ups, resistance training, and consumed massive amounts of chicken, rice, pizza, and Haagen-Dazs ice cream to pack on 2.5 stone of muscle and bulk. The real Charles Bronson later stated that Hardy looked more like him than he looked like himself. What made the transformation remarkable wasn't just the size, but how Hardy used it. His body became a weapon in the performance, with aggressive stillness and theatrical movements that made him terrifying even when silent. The training was so specific that Hardy had to quickly put weight on his forearms, chest, and neck, resulting in a bizarrely top-heavy physique where his legs looked like those of a stork compared to his massive upper body. Years later, Hardy would bulk up again for Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, adding 30 pounds of muscle. But by then, the actor was already starting to feel the consequences. In later interviews, Hardy admitted that approaching his 40s meant these rapid transformations came with lasting effects. Joints that didn't click before now click constantly, and the rapid back and forth between roles leaves him a cheer than he used to be. Like Christian Bale, Hardy discovered that the body keeps score of every extreme transformation, and at a certain age, it stops bouncing back the way it once did. Daniel Day-Lewis and total immersion. Daniel Day-Lewis took method acting to levels that made other actors uncomfortable, undergoing transformations that were as psychological as they were physical. For My Left Foot, where he played Christy Brown, an artist with cerebral palsy, Day-Lewis spent the entire shoot in a wheelchair and refused to break character even off camera. Crew members had to feed him with spoons because he insisted on staying in character, and he later admitted the role affected him so deeply it took months to fully separate from it. For in the name of the Father, he had himself locked in solitary confinement for 3 days without water and ordered crew members to throw cold water on him whenever they passed. He also lost 50 pounds for the role. The transformation was as much about psychological suffering as physical appearance. When preparing for The Last of the Mohicans, Day-Lewis moved to the wilderness of North Carolina for a month, where he learned to hunt and skin animals, fight with tomahawks, and run with a heavy 12-pound flintlock rifle. For Gangs of New York, he learned to butcher meat and sharpen knives to play Bill the Butcher, refusing to break character even off set, and creating palpable tension with his intensity. His Lincoln transformation required a year of preparation, where he read over 100 books, perfected the president's high-pitched nasal voice, and had everyone on set address him as Mr. President. He even sent text messages in character as Abraham Lincoln. For There Will Be Blood, he isolated himself in the California desert, living in a tent to understand his character's solitude. What made Day-Lewis's career unique wasn't just these transformations, but his selectivity. With only 22 feature films in his entire career, every transformation mattered, and every one left a mark. By his own admission in later interviews, he acknowledged that these methods took pieces of him each time, making him wonder if there was even a real Daniel Day-Lewis left behind the mosaic of characters. Michael Fassbender's Hunger Strike. Michael Fassbender's transformation for Hunger in 2008 remains one of the most medically concerning weight losses ever captured on film. To play IRA hunger striker Bobby Sands, who died after refusing food for 66 days while imprisoned by the British government, Fassbender went on a diet of less than 900 calories for 10 weeks. By the time filming wrapped, he'd lost over 40 pounds, and his appearance was so skeletal that it alarmed everyone who saw him. The transformation wasn't just about looking thin, it was about capturing the physical reality of someone slowly starving themselves for a political cause. Fassbender worked closely with nutritionists to monitor his health, but even with supervision, the process was dangerous. After his final checkup, his doctor told him that when he'd come in for his last appointment during filming, the assistant had seen him and whispered that he looked so ill she thought he had cancer. The gaunt, hollow-eyed appearance in the film's most powerful scenes came from genuine physical depletion. Director Steve McQueen, in his debut feature, used the transformation to make an unflinching statement about the cost of political resistance. The film features a famous 17-minute unbroken take where Fassbender's skeletal Sands debates with a priest about the morality of his hunger strike. The camera never cuts away, forcing audiences to confront the reality of what political martyrdom actually looks like on a human body. John Hurt's endurance test. John Hurt's transformation into John Merrick for The Elephant Man in 1980 was so grueling that he joked it finally made him hate acting. Hurt had to arrive on set at 5 in the morning to begin the makeup process, which took 7 to 8 hours every single day. Makeup artist Christopher Tucker built an elaborate system of prosthetics that covered most of Hurt's head and face, creating Merrick's severe deformities. The mask was so restrictive that Hurt couldn't sleep lying down or even eat while wearing it. He would eat his last meal around mid-morning, usually raw eggs mixed with orange juice, and wouldn't eat again until after midnight when the mask came off. Because of the physical and mental strain, Hurt could only work alternate days, making the filming schedule even more challenging. What made the performance remarkable was that despite being buried under latex and unable to use most of his face for expressions, Hurt created one of the most emotionally resonant performances of his career. His voice became his primary tool, and he developed a distinctive, gentle, quavering quality that conveyed Merrick's intelligence and vulnerability. The film's most powerful moment comes when Merrick, trapped by an angry mob, removes his hood and cries out that he's not an animal, he's a human being. The transformation was so effective that it led to widespread criticism of the Academy Awards for not having a makeup category, prompting them to create the Best Makeup Award the following year. Hurt endured this punishment because he understood the power of the story. As he explained in interviews, The Elephant Man embodies everything that's misunderstood in all of us, and people feel tremendous empathy for him because they see their own struggles for acceptance and dignity reflected in Merrick's journey. Benedict Cumberbatch's starvation transformation. Benedict Cumberbatch underwent a dramatic and carefully monitored weight loss for The Courier, where he played British businessman Greville Wynne, who was recruited as a Cold War spy and eventually captured by the Russians. The role required Cumberbatch to portray Wynne after 18 months of starvation in a Soviet prison, and the actor took the transformation seriously, despite having already learned the dangers from watching peers go through similar processes. Production actually stopped filming for 3 months specifically to allow Cumberbatch to lose the weight safely. During that break, he used cold water swimming, intense exercise, and carefully controlled nutrition to drop the pounds without destroying his metabolism. Unlike some actors who starve themselves rapidly, Cumberbatch worked with nutritionists to ensure he could reverse the process without lasting damage. He's spoken about feeling a deep responsibility when portraying real people, especially those whose stories have been forgotten or never properly told. For Cumberbatch, the physical transformation was necessary to honor Wynne's actual suffering rather than just acting thin. The Cuba Missile Crisis era story depicts an ordinary man forced to do extraordinary things, and Cumberbatch felt the audience needed to see the physical cost of that heroism etched into his frame. What made this transformation different from his more famous roles like Doctor Strange or Sherlock was the vulnerability it required. There was no wit or cleverness to hide behind, just the raw reality of what espionage and imprisonment do to a human body. Eddie Redmayne's precision work. Eddie Redmayne's Oscar-winning transformation into Stephen Hawking for The Theory of Everything was less about weight loss or prosthetics and more about movement. For 4 months before filming, Redmayne studied hours of video footage of Hawking, imitating his movements with a mirror and an iPad. He shed 15 pounds to achieve Hawking's slight frame, but the real work was learning to portray the progressive physical deterioration caused by ALS. Redmayne worked with choreographer Alexandra Reynolds and regularly visited a London neurology clinic, meeting with ALS patients and their families. He would feel their hands, talk to their partners, and try to understand both the physical and emotional ramifications of the disease. The challenge was that while Hawking appeared still in his wheelchair, every muscle in Redmayne's body had to be contorted and tensed to accurately portray the condition. It wasn't relaxation, but constant muscular effort to maintain positions that looked frozen. The transformation progressed throughout the film as Hawking ages from 21 to 45, showing the gradual loss of mobility and speech. Makeup artist Jan Sewell painted the gradual physical changes onto Redmayne's face, but the actor had to find a way to show Hawking's undiminished spirit and humor despite his body's betrayal. When Redmayne finally met the real Stephen Hawking days before filming began, he spent 3 hours nervously chattering, terrified of silence. Hawking, who communicated using cheek muscles and a sensor on his glasses, eventually smiled at him. Redmayne later said that smile made him realize the key to the performance. Despite being able to move so few muscles, Hawking had one of the most charismatic faces imaginable, and when he smiled, the world felt like a great place. Colin Farrell's unrecognizable penguin. Colin Farrell's transformation into Oswald Cobblepot for the Batman shocked audiences who couldn't believe the handsome Irish leading man was hiding under all that makeup. Working with makeup artist Mike Marino, Farrell spent 3 hours every day having prosthetics applied to completely change his appearance. Layers of silicone covered his trademark sharp jawline, gave him jowls and a bulbous nose, and transformed his entire face into the grotesque mobster version of the Penguin. The transformation was so complete that Jeffrey Wright walked right past Farrell on set multiple times without recognizing his co-star. But Farrell didn't just rely on prosthetics. For The Lobster a few years earlier, he'd undergone a different kind of transformation, gaining 45 pounds in just 8 weeks by sitting around doing nothing while loading up on pizza, Häagen-Dazs, and cheeseburgers with no portion control. He revealed that he would microwave tubs of ice cream until they melted to a drinkable state. The surreal comedy required his character to have a dad bod, and Farrell committed fully. He later admitted that eating 2 cheeseburgers, fries, Coca-Colas, and 2 slices of chocolate cake at 10 in the morning was not actually fun. When he saw himself shirtless on screen at the world premiere, he gasped audibly. He'd forgotten what it looked like and wasn't pleased with the result, immediately getting back into shape afterward. The contrast between that role and his sleek appearance in most of his other films showed Farrell's willingness to sacrifice vanity for a performance. Tom Hanks's Island Ordeal. Tom Hanks's transformation for Cast Away required such precise planning that the production literally shut down for a year to allow him to lose weight. Director Robert Zemeckis shot all the early scenes where Hanks's character is healthy and working for FedEx, then halted production completely. During that year-long break, Hanks stopped working out entirely, grew a massive beard, and lost 50 pounds to portray a man who'd been stranded on a deserted island for years. The transformation wasn't just about the weight. Hanks's face became gaunt and weathered, his body lean and desperate-looking, and the wild beard and long hair made him nearly unrecognizable from the clean-cut executive seen earlier. When production resumed, they filmed all the island scenes with this dramatically altered appearance, then wrapped with his rescue and return to civilization. The logistics were unprecedented at the time. Studios don't typically agree to pause a major production for a year, but Zemeckis and Hanks knew the transformation needed to feel authentic. You can't fake that kind of starvation and weathering with makeup. The body had to genuinely look like it had survived on coconuts and fish for 4 years. One Reddit user praised the transformation by noting that Hanks really committed to the point where acting became the easy part after all the physical preparation. The year off also gave Zemeckis time to work on What Lies Beneath, making productive use of the downtime. When audiences finally saw the completed film, the transformation sold the isolation and desperation of the character in ways that prosthetics never could have achieved. Jared Leto's extreme swings. Jared Leto has transformed his body so many times that his methods have become increasingly controversial. For Dallas Buyers Club, he lost 30 pounds, waxed his entire body, including his eyebrows, and lived in character as transgender woman Rayon for 25 days during filming. The transformation was so complete that people who knew Leto barely recognized him. But that was nothing compared to what he did for Chapter 27, where he played John Lennon's assassin, Mark David Chapman. Leto gained 67 pounds by eating nothing but unhealthy snacks, including microwaved pints of ice cream mixed with soy sauce and olive oil. By the end of filming, the extra weight had taken such a toll that he could no longer walk to set and had to be wheeled around. He later said it was his most dramatic transformation to date, even more extreme than his weight loss for Dallas Buyers Club. What distinguishes Leto from other method actors is the speed and frequency of these transformations. He's repeatedly swung between extremes over his career, gaining and losing weight in ways that medical professionals have warned against. Unlike Christian Bale, who's admitted these transformations are now too dangerous to continue, Leto has kept pushing his body to extremes well into his 50s. The controversy around some of his method acting choices, particularly his portrayal of Rayon, has sparked debates about whether the physical sacrifice justifies the approach when representing marginalized communities. But there's no denying the visual impact of his transformations or the dedication required to achieve them. Robert De Niro's boxing weight. Robert De Niro set the template for extreme physical transformations in Raging Bull, and his 60-pound weight gain during a production break remains one of the most famous body changes in cinema history. The film required him to portray boxer Jake LaMotta at different stages of life, from his lean fighting years to his bloated, overweight retirement. De Niro trained intensely to achieve a boxer's physique, even entering 3 genuine Brooklyn boxing matches and winning 2 of them. He accidentally broke Joe Pesci's rib during a sparring scene, and that moment appears in the film with a quick cut after the impact. But the real transformation came later when production took a break specifically to allow De Niro to gain weight for the older LaMotta scenes. He traveled to Italy and ate as much pasta as humanly possible, deliberately putting on 60 pounds in a relatively short period. At the time, it was the most weight any actor had ever gained for a role. The contrast between lean, powerful De Niro in the boxing scenes and bloated, defeated De Niro in the later scenes created a devastating portrait of physical and spiritual decline. De Niro's dedication to showing those decades of wear through his actual appearance rather than prosthetics set a new standard for method acting transformations. His performance earned him an Academy Award and established him as the king of transformational method acting, a title he held until Christian Bale came along decades later. The shooting of the movie and De Niro's commitment earned him tremendous respect in the film industry and set the bar for all transformative roles since. His willingness to essentially destroy his body for the latter half of the film demonstrated a level of commitment that few actors would dare attempt. Charlize Theron's Monster. Charlize Theron's transformation for Monster in 2003 remains one of the most dramatic examples of a glamorous actress making herself unrecognizable for a role. Known for her striking beauty, Theron gained 30 pounds, shaved her eyebrows, wore prosthetic teeth that gave her a snaggle-toothed appearance, and used makeup to make her skin look stained and aged. She chose to actually gain weight instead of wearing a fat suit because she needed to move and express herself as Aileen Wuornos, the serial killer she was portraying. the weight had to feel real in her body for the performance to be authentic. The transformation went beyond physical appearance to capture Warnos's borderline personality disorder and the darkness of someone who murdered 7 men between 1989 and 1990. Theron won the Academy Award for Best Actress, cementing the transformation's success. Years later, she would undergo another dramatic weight gain for Tully, putting on 50 pounds to play a mother struggling with postpartum depression. But that transformation came with consequences. Theron later revealed that losing the weight after Tully took a year and a half compared to the relatively quick recovery after Monster. She admitted that her body at 43 was very different from her body at 27, and her doctor made sure she was extremely aware of that fact. She even joked about setting alarms in the middle of the night to wake up and eat cold macaroni and cheese just to maintain the weight. The experience convinced her to never transform her body that dramatically again, joining the growing list of actors who've realized these changes have lasting effects that worsen with age. Renee Zellweger's Bridget Jones' Journey. Renee Zellweger's transformation for Bridget Jones's Diary created controversy from the start because the character's supposed weight problem was actually just an average-sized woman's body. The American actress gained 30 pounds to play the quintessentially British singleton, facing criticism for perpetuating unrealistic body standards while simultaneously facing praise for her commitment to the role. Zellweger had to master a British accent while gaining weight that the film treated as excessive, but was actually perfectly normal. She gained the weight again for the sequel, The Edge of Reason, but by the time Bridget Jones's Baby came around, she only put on a few pounds and used prosthetics for breasts and a baby bump instead. Zellweger later told Vogue that Bridget Jones is a perfectly normal weight, and she'd never understood why it mattered so much. The comment highlighted how the film industry's obsession with weight transformations sometimes misses the point. What should have been a story about a relatable woman navigating modern life became focused on whether the actress was heavy enough to convincingly play someone the script treated as overweight. Years after the original films, Zellweger underwent a different kind of transformation that sparked even more controversy. Her appearance changed so dramatically between projects that tabloids speculated endlessly about plastic surgery and aging. Zellweger herself addressed the scrutiny by saying, "Aging is natural and everyone looks different as they get older." The public's reaction to her changing appearance revealed the impossible standards faced by actresses, especially those who'd previously transformed their bodies for roles. Whether gaining weight for a character or simply aging naturally, Zellweger discovered that her appearance would always be subject to intense scrutiny and judgment.